Live stream audio check. Good afternoon, everyone. We've just ticked into 2:30, so I'm happy to commence the meeting. So welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the North Somerset Council Cabinet. We've got a busy agenda again this afternoon, but we'll try and progress through matters as promptly and efficiently as we can. So the first item I have on the agenda is addresses by members of the public, and I believe that we have an address by Lucy Byrne. So if you'd like to kick us off, Lucy.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Lucy Byrne from Pill. I'm representing over 1,500 residents who have signed a petition organised by Sustainable Pill and District to object to excessive house building proposals on our green belt, to challenge the lack of adequate consultation by North Somerset Council, and to stand up for our community. The proposals for 1,100 new dwellings are 5 times higher than the proposals in our evidence-based neighbourhood plan. Almost 50% growth in 15 years will lead to a breakdown in social cohesion, losses to local wildlife, dangers to health from motorway pollution, increased risks of flooding due to runoff, damage to residents' health and well-being from the vast reduction in safely accessible, open, green spaces, road safety dangers from increased traffic. All are amplified to unacceptable levels with such high numbers of dwellings in this developer-led plan. Junction 19 is already dangerously overloaded. This plan states that there are small-scale deliverable measures that are capable of addressing the issue. However, we have seen no evidence for this. Highways England have not yet completed their report to see if mitigations are possible. To proceed now is a major risk. The lack of adequate local consultation, no more than 29 respondents for any one of the 5 sites, leaves this plan open to major obstacles, objections and delays. We have seen no evidence that limited additional engagements have informed any elements of the plan. Residents have lost faith in the consultation process and trust in the council. Dealing with the fallout of disempowered, disaffected and angry communities is a significant risk. As Cabinet members, we know you are under immense pressure to vote this plan in today. You are being told that the risks of no plan are too high, but the risks of pushing ahead too quickly are greater. A more robust choice would be to delay for a few more months, properly consult with local residents, wait for the Highways report, supplement your developer-led plan with a community-led spatial plan. Then produce a plan for all, not just those who stand to profit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. So obviously we'll be addressing some of these matters during the meeting later, but I'm sure that the Cabinet member, Annemieke Waite, will also want to pick up some of those points with you after the meeting. Okay, so we'll move on to item 2, which is apologies for absence. I believe we've only got one apology, which is from Councillor Solomon, who is receiving some medical treatment today. So I'm sure that we all wish him well, but note his apologies. Item 3 is declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest. Have I got any? No. Okay, thank you. We've then got item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of September. To approve those as a correct record, can I have a... Thank you, Councillor Caniford, proposing, and Councillor Waite seconding, thank you. Everyone happy to approve the minutes? Thank you very much. Item 5 is non-cabinet councillors' addresses. I'm not aware that we have any. So we'll move on to the first formal item of business, which is the North Somerset Local Plan approval of the Regulation 19 document. Annemieke, Councillor Waite, if you'd like to lead this one off, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report asks Cabinet to approve the publication of our draft local plan for the period 2026 to 2041, the version we intend to take forward to formal public consultation under Regulation 19. This has been a long and complex process which responds to national reforms and government-imposed higher housing targets. It is also shaped by changing housing requirements and the challenge of balancing growth with protection of our environment, our communities, and the special character of North Somerset. I want to start by acknowledging that preparing this plan has not been easy. Allocating sites for new homes and jobs is always contentious. Every site is real. It affects real people, real landscapes, and real communities. We have listened carefully through every round of consultation and engagement, and despite this, I know that some communities will feel disappointed or even hard done by. But we have worked hard to make sure that the sites we are now proposing are in the most sustainable locations, places where growth can be supported by infrastructure, where people can live close to jobs, services, and sustainable transport options, and where we can build vibrant, healthy communities for the future, enhancing services and facilities for all our residents. This plan delivers on the government's standing method housing requirement. Over 23,000 new homes across the plan period. But it does so in a way that aligns with our spatial strategy, our climate goals, and our commitment to fairness across the district. Alongside homes, the plan identifies a range of employment sites, around 73 hectares in total, to ensure that our residents have access to good quality local jobs and to strengthen the resilience in our economy. These sites have been selected to complement our housing allocations and to support growth in the right places with excellent transport links. One of the strongest messages we've heard from our communities is the need for infrastructure to come forward in step with development. That is why this plan is supported by a detailed infrastructure delivery plan, setting out what will be needed from new schools, GP surgeries, to road improvements, public transport routes, walking and cycling connections, and community facilities. We are determined that growth will not outpace the services people rely on. The local plan is further supported by a range of other supplementary assessments, including transport, viability, sustainability, habitat regulation, and perhaps most importantly, an up-to-date local housing needs assessment. And we're equally determined that we build hand in hand with nature. This plan puts the environment at its heart, from policies on biodiversity net gain and green infrastructure to protecting habitats and improving access to nature. It also ensures that new development contributes positively to our climate ambitions. Net zero homes, renewable energy generation, and sustainable transport choices, as well as active travel options, are all embedded throughout. We know the climate and nature emergencies demand urgent action, and this local plan is one of the strongest tools we have to make that action real. By adopting this plan, we will move from reacting to speculative, unplanned proposals towards a plan-led future, one where we, as a council, set the vision for where and how our communities grow. With an up-to-date local plan, without an up-to-date local plan, we remain exposed to piecemeal developer-led growth that delivers less infrastructure and less benefit for our residents. So today's decision is an important milestone. It allows us to take the next step to publish the plan for consultation, invite formal representation on its soundness, and then move towards submission for independent examination next year. Between the consultation and submission, there will be a period of reflection. We will consider all representations made and any other material considerations that arise, such as national policy changes or relevant case law, and whether any amendments need to be proposed to the plan. I do really want to thank everyone who has contributed to this work, in particular our planning officers, but also our partners, our parish councils, scrutiny members, and the very many residents who have engaged throughout the process. This has been a collective effort, and it reflects countless hours of evidence gathering, consultation and refinement. Chair, I commend this report and the recommendations to Cabinet. The plan before us is ambitious, it is responsible, and it is rooted in sustainability. It gives us a clear path for meeting the needs of our growing population while protecting that what makes North Somerset such a special place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Can I have a seconder for the... Thank you, Catherine, Councillor Gibbons. Okay, any questions or comments from members, please? So, Councillor Bird first, and then Councillor Burden.
Cabinet members, firstly, I'd like to say what a great job I think Natalie and crew have done in getting the local plan this far and this quickly. However, I'm still very nervous about us getting things wrong here. Nailsea and Backwell form a major part of this local plan, so I'm very aware of the situation there and the need to get things right. The main infrastructure proposal is the strategic rail crossing and the A370 link road. It's an idea that predates the local plan by many years, and its aim has always been the relief of Station Road and Backwell Crossroads. Indeed, the ACOM study used in the local plan focuses on the crossroads, using its data to back up the justification of the link road. However, Gleeson's, the developers whose site is south of Nailsea, have recently commissioned their own transport study by iTransport. It comes to very different contrasting conclusions, which raise a lot of questions. I would also point out that BSIP will be installing new smart intelligent traffic signals at the crossroads, this making all previous data in both these reports relatively null and void. Added to this, recent BSEP data identified that the busiest time of the day at the traffic lights was actually 3:30 in the afternoon at schools out. The rail crossing and link road would have no effect on Station Road and Crossroads at its worst time of day, and it raises the question of what this link road is actually trying to achieve. Also, little has been done to investigate the reverse effects of this road on Nailsea. 1,000 new houses are placed at the head of the proposed link road, their quickest way to the M5 being via the link road through Nailsea, via a single-track ancient causeway to the M5 south, or past two busy primary schools and up Wraxall Lane to the M5 north. And you can add another 500 houses from the Gleeson site using the same access routes if the link road is built. There is also a question of raising money to build this hugely expensive strategic rail crossing in the first place. And this raises further questions of what alternatives need to be investigated for Nailsea and Backwell if it can't be built. Cabinet members, the above raises many questions over the strategic rail link and the A370 link road. But having said all this, my request is fairly simple. That Appendix 6.1, rather than underline the strategic rail crossing and link road, clearly states that the case for the strategic rail crossing and the A370 link road has still to be fully tested. I would therefore ask this to be amendment in the 6.1 document. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Annemieke, would you prefer to respond as we go, or do you want to do them all at the end? I would normally do them all at the end, but is that okay? Fine, thank you. In which case, I'll go to Councillor Burden, Pete next, and then Councillor Petty.
Yeah. First of all, can I thank the executive member and all the officers working on this plan? There can't be many people around who realise the amount of work they have put in, and I do. And I'm very pleased to hear that the executive member has pointed out this is a genuine consultation exercise and there is a possibility of amendment. Because in past years, Chairman, we've gone through this stage, been told it's purely for consultation, And the next time it's come up, we've been told, you've agreed it, we move forward. Very much on the comments Councillor Bird made, though, Chairman, I think throughout the district, this plan has concerns and problems with the infrastructure delivery. Some of these cases might be totally valid, but others, I think, could fall down. We've got when he was talking about crossing the railway in Backwell, that, to my knowledge, has been on the cards for over 50 years. We've got other methods around Pill and East Ingledano of improving access to the motorway into Bristol. And short of reintroducing the Pill ferry, I find it very difficult to realise those links are ever going to be made. We then move on to Portishead, Chairman, and I am extremely concerned about the release of the green belt around Western Bigwood. I accept it is purely because of government edict, and I'm sure nobody really wanted to do this with the green belt in this area. But in one of those cases, the officers seem quite clear. A buffer will be provided within the site allocated, which I can accept. The other one, near Black Rock, they're talking about the mitigation being off-site. And I don't really agree with that, Chairman. I think if you are taking something out of the Greenbelt, you should take out enough land to fully fulfil the needs of that development. So the Black Rock one I am concerned about dramatically. Subject to that, Chairman, and subject to taking the executive member's word that this is a genuine consultation, and if particular issues are raised, they will be addressed between this process and going to an inquiry. Best of luck and congratulations on the work you've done so far.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. So I've got Councillor Petty next, and then I'll come to Councillor Porter.
Thank you. Over the last 6 years, I can't count the number of times that I have come here and spoken about the local plan and the pressure to build vast numbers of houses. It seems we're getting closer to a local plan that will go to the inspectors, but I must admit we've been sat here before and said the same. Since I was elected, the numbers set by national government have gone up and up after successive Conservative governments, and now this Labour government has carried on a myth of growth at any cost. Build more houses and you'll reduce the price. Unfortunately, this is a myth that I do not believe in. And many of my residents have also seen this fact. So it is a real worry, what are we doing here today? However, I can reflect that this is national policy that is putting the pressure on us. I do understand the need for housing that people can afford, and in a number of different locations across the district. When I speak to residents in Backwell, they acknowledge that we will need housing for the next 15 years. However, I'll now refer to the data that's been available on what is reasonable growth based on need. Referring to the Housing Needs Assessment of September 2023, because that's the most recent version that's actually currently published, although I recognise we're going to publish a recent one. It stated that based on detailed analysis of local evidence, the overall need was for 993 developments per annum. And to take the planned period, to round that up to 1,000, it would be 15,000 over 15 years. What this Labour government is doing is forcing North Somerset Council to develop a plan with over 8,000 homes it doesn't need, and most of it, if not all of it, is to be developed in the Greenbelt. In Backwell, in Pill, as this resident spoke about, in Portishead, and in the Greenbelt outside Dundry and Long Ashton. And for me, that is just not good enough. Backwell has had 40% growth already consented. But what we're proposing here is 118% growth on Backwell. It's disproportionate, and without guaranteed funding streams, it is unsustainable. East of Backwell is a much more complex site than this paper suggests, with significant surface water issues which are not being addressed, and indeed exasperated by consent on housing at Farley Fields, which is a field that is physically topography. It's a slope above the A370 that then east of Backwell comes down. So you concrete over more of it, you impact the risk on the A370, and then the land that is lower than that. The list of required infrastructure and amenities for Backwell is vast. And again, something I've spoken about at council meetings is the systems are wrong, that the only way we're providing our council services is having the developers pay for these services. This is a broken system, and it really worries me that this is how services are being provided. And residents know that, and it worries them too. So as you can hear, this has taken a lot of thought and sleepless nights. We want the right houses in the right places, but this is too much for one village. Let's briefly go to the infrastructure that Councillor Bird has also referred to, and Councillor Burden. The proposal to have a road go under the railway is just, it's not yet been, people of the local area are not convinced that this can be delivered. And I have real concerns, and we need to do more work to be reassured that this would be built first or in the early stages, or as people have found with Metro West and Banwell Bypass, will we wait another 25 years? My question to Councillor Waite is, can you reassure us that you will continue to work hard on infrastructure first? Finally, I hope this local plan, alongside setting high standards for quality, when it is adopted, if it is adopted, will give more power to enforcement so that they can work proactively and work to protect our communities that are very likely to see significant impacts with these vast developments. And so thank you for the officer's work to date, but as you can hear, I am extremely concerned on the pressure that the national government puts on our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. So I've got Councillor Porter, Terry next, and then Councillor Daw.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you know, we originally we got it down to 14,000 houses. We're back up to 23, and I don't think we've got any option with that, unfortunately. That's what the government's forcing to us. But it's quite interesting because when the local plan come out now, one of the areas that was marked down was round by Elborough at Hutton, some 400 houses there and 300 just next to it in Lochin. Now, we thought, oh, well, you know, we couldn't find how we were going to oppose it because there is a main road going by there. We thought this isn't going to happen for a long time. We've already had developers in now coming in with plans that are showing development on those 700 or 800 houses. And our village has only got 1,100 to start with, you know. So, you know, although I know this is going out for consultation, but things are already moving quickly. You know, I was absolutely amazed when our parish council and us as district councillors have been asked, can we go to a consultation? They showed a plan with all the areas they want to develop. So, you know, it's all right going out for consultation, but things are moving out there quite quickly now. So, you know, it's going to be difficult to change things. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So I've got Councillor Daw, Tom next, and then Councillor Homaris.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and young people when I say that this local plan does not provide for young people. Housing is unaffordable and will not come down with building more housing. Housing is an asset. It holds value for that purpose because of the way in which the government has designed housing. Social and affordable housing lists are massive and will continue to grow, and I do not believe, even with the 50% target or that we're 40% targets that we're proposing in this local plan, we will not get to a position where young people are then next on that list. We are not prioritised, mainly rightly so, because we do not always have the necessary needs. However, we will end up in a position where there are people that in their 30s and 40s in this local authority that are not having houses. It will add more strain onto our local services, and we need to address that through this local plan. The issues raised by my fellow members around infrastructure, to me, is the result of the council that is urban sprawl and restricted, and we are trying to resolve that issue by creating more urban sprawl, which we are just in this is just kind of tinkering around the edges to add slightly more restrictions. To me, the mega house builders that massively profit off of this are not going to stop urban sprawl and build the kind of housing that we need, because the money is not in the right place for that currently. The only way I see us as a local authority out of this situation is for us to build our own housing, and I am putting that on record that I do believe that as a local authority we should be looking into building our own housing and delivering for the people, especially young people, because time and time again we complain on this council that we have an ageing population and that is hitting us hard from the taxpayer money and from an economy point of view. I think we need to address that issue at the root, which is that it is unaffordable for young people to live in this authority and work in this authority. I want to thank Annamika and the officers for the work they've done on this. I understand with the government regulations, this is, to me, something of the best that you could produce. But I do have my reservations, and I've come to voice that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. So I've got Councillor, and I think that's all the non-cabinet members who've indicated. So I've got Councillor Homaris and then Councillor Whitfield.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Waite, for your detailed presentation. So, as the Cabinet Member for Homes and Health, this is very much not my paper, but it does cover a lot of my area and is my favourite topic of all time, which is health and planning. So, if you'll please indulge me. I'm going to just have a question about, some comment on the policies that I think are important to pull out. I also have some questions about infrastructure and also a comment about enforcement. So there are a lot of great things in this local plan, and for me, the most important thing is how we are putting health at the heart of planning. We say the purpose of the planning system is to contribute to the achievement of sustainable development, and that we should look to balance economic, social, and environmental goals. But here we have one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. We're already living with the impact of climate change, our health systems, and an economy that are still recovering from COVID-19, and all made so much worse by widening and very stubborn inequalities. In North Somerset, there is a 14-year difference in life expectancy between residents with the best and worst outcomes, more like 20-year difference in healthy life expectancy. So this is not just comparing between wards, but it's also within wards, such as my own ward of Pill. While planning includes access to healthcare like GPs, pharmacies, and hospitals, 80% of health outcomes are caused by all those wider determinants of health, things like transport, education, jobs, housing, all of which we can influence by a local plan, and this is what I see us trying to do in this local plan. Planning often talks about mitigating impacts, just making things less bad, less worse. But I really think we need to think about how planning can be creating better, more health and more well-being, improving the places we live. So I'm really pleased to see healthy places, especially for children and families, as a key part of this plan. So a few policies I would quickly just pick out. DP 49 is about healthy places, sets out a framework for something called health impact assessments. And these are, in our situation, we are asking for requiring a health impact assessment for developments of 50 or more dwellings. A health impact assessment is an analysis of ways that a development can improve health and well-being of an existing area, as well as the people who would be living in that development. And it should be proportionate and not just a tick box exercise. While other places have lower thresholds, like South Cambridgeshire and Torbay, but like us, there are at least 17 other local plans which require a health impact assessment for 50 or more dwellings. The policy here provides for a supplementary planning document, and what I want to see is us members and officers working together with the best minds in our local area. So Bristol Health Partners have projects called Shine and True. Don't ask me to say the entire or the name, because I will forget. But these are cross-disciplinary groups of researchers renowned internationally for their work on health and planning, and they are right on our doorstep and they're eager to help. We've briefly spoken about affordable homes and the need for affordable homes. Just to point out that under the government's new requirement, the golden rules are that we are supposed to reach 50% in areas of greenbelt land, which I think is very important. There's DP 46, which is about housing type and mix, and this, importantly, I think, provides 5% wheelchair accessible housing in any development, which is including all housing, so affordable and market. And this is strengthened from before it was only 5% of affordable housing. This means, at minimum, there will be one wheelchair accessible home in a development of 10 dwellings. And all new housing should be adaptable. And so I thank the Disabled Access Group feedback for helping shape this policy together with officers. And to note that a higher proportion is still possible depending on need for an analysis done. And the last policy to flag here that I'd like to point out is the DP6, which is about net zero construction. When I was elected, it was very important to me to push for healthy and low carbon housing that is warm and well built and cheap to run. The average electricity bill for households in the country is around £1,800. This is too high and it's unaffordable for many, causing poor health outcomes that our other parts of the government, the NHS and others, then have to deal with. DP6 says we want net zero operational energy for the housing, so that's about running a house. But we also seek an ambitious target for embodied carbon, which is about the emissions generated through the building materials, so hopefully less concrete and more cross-laminated timber, as well as the construction process. And what I want to see is more detail in the SBD to follow. So 3 things I'm still worried about. My colleagues have pointed out, have spoken eloquently about the house numbers being much too high, and this is something that is being pushed upon us from the government, the central government. It is disappointing, and you've got a system which is not working. You've got 1 million homes already with planning permission, but not built in the last 10 years. This is what the LGA says. And our numbers are determined not according to need of our population, but by a calculation, which just seems unfair. The second is about infrastructure. My colleagues have also, a number of you have spoken eloquently about the need for infrastructure and a lack of detail in this plan and the infrastructure delivery plan of what will come. What does this actually mean, that housing will come with infrastructure? We have to show evidence to support that our plan is sound and sustainable, but so far I haven't seen it. I understand we will when it all goes to consultation, but so far I haven't seen it. Pill is my ward, I know it best, and the infrastructure delivery plan has no additional healthcare for Pill, has no specified green infrastructure, and there are no highways mitigations for alleviating the congestion on the A369 and junction 19 of the M5 that I think the Portishead colleagues might speak about as well. And it doesn't acknowledge that there is already existing congestion in these areas. It only talks about the A370 and other places. Residents have pointed out over and over again that there's only a primary school and a skate park being provided in the IDP. I understand there will be a supplementary planning document to cover all the new strategic growth areas, and it is essential that this is done with the existing local community. We owe it to our residents to see this very clearly set out. Residents have told me that they don't trust the system. They feel that the development is being pushed onto them and us. And as the public participant mentioned, they feel that the consultations our council consultations often don't reach ordinary people, and that we ask meaningless questions where it feels that a decision has already been made. I know from working with officers that this is not the case, but it is often what it looks like from the outside. Sometimes there is no real choice, I feel, like the additional sites process, but often there is. I think I will only mention Pill to the extent that my resident and the public participant has already said that the housing growth feels disproportionate, 40 to 50%. But I understand, and I've heard from colleagues that residents feel the same in all the other strategic growth areas, as well as the other areas that are not strategic growth areas, but are also getting lots of housing growth. It just feels unfair that their neighbourhood plans are being ignored due to top-down targets. Lastly, about enforcement. Residents have told me that they've seen developers promise all kinds of things, and this is never delivered. Research I have just found out from the RTPI, which is the Royal Town Planning Institute, done with the University of Sheffield last December, showed that if you look at 42 completed developments across 5 local planning authorities since 2012, which is around 6,000 homes, only 53% of the ecological features that were conditioned actually existed when they looked. So that means 3/4 of the bird boxes and bat boxes promised were missing. 4 out of 10 of the trees supposed to be planted were dead or missing and this is across all different types and levels of house builders. So developers had failed to put in place half of what they said they would. I do have people saying to me things like that they think biodiversity net gain is a scam. I don't believe this. I think this is, this is an internationally renowned policy that lots of other countries are looking at. But at the same time, there are these real fears about the enforcement and how we can support our councils to really be strong. So I would just like to have some reassurance that we are doing something to make sure that we can be looking carefully at enforcement. So how can we do things differently? And to sum up, my predecessor in Pill Ward, Don Davis, who was the former leader of this council, was very keen to bring this plan forward several years back to avoid delay and speculative development, and we've seen all of that in the intervening years. I will support this local plan to go out for consultation. I don't agree with the way government is pushing overdevelopment on us, but we have to do the best we can. We have to make sure that development doesn't just mitigate harm, but actually positively is an opportunity to improve people's health and well-being and the environment that we live in. Just finally, last year, the head of Natural England, someone called Tony Juniper, he wrote in the Sunday Telegraph, which is not a newspaper I normally read, that England doesn't have enough houses and also doesn't have enough nature. If we are to succeed in meeting our national needs, we require more of both. For too long, we've been told that the only way to build more homes is to lose space for nature, while the only way to protect it is through a ring of green steel around our towns and cities, known as the Green Belt. But this isn't working for people, nature, or the environment. So let's use the powers of our local plan to create the best places we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Whitfield, Roger, and then Councillor Caniford.
Don't worry, Mike, I will be brief. You know what? I don't think there's anything really that's been mentioned here today that I would disagree with. I think everybody accepts the need for housing that we have in this country. Everybody seems to be equally offended by the areas that have been chosen for the housing, which to a certain extent, I guess, means that the plan must be relatively fair if we offend everybody in the same way. I mean, first of all, importantly, I think we should commend everybody who's taken a part in developing this plan. There's been a lot of work gone into it. There's been a lot of work from officers. There's been a lot of work from members gone into this. And I think that's really important that we look at that. There are some issues that we have that have been brought out here time and time again by everybody, which is the issues of having top-down targets. And I think Councillor Petty was fully right there. We have a housing needs assessment. In a perfect world, the government would have said, take your housing needs assessment and that's what you need to build. But that's not where we are, is it? And there's the issue that we should be building these houses ourselves. But equally, that's not where we are. We're in and I would love for us to be building these houses ourselves. But things need to change before we get to that place anyway. So here we are. If we don't do this, if we don't get a plan, then we are at the beck and call of the developers. So we're between a rock and a hard place. We've got all these things that we don't want. The government saying that we have to have them, and we have to make a decision on it. So, I mean, I support the plan as it stands. I'd like to see some tweaks, wouldn't we all, eh? But I do know that there is a lot of concern in Portishead, particularly around the Western Bigwood area, where the neighbourhood plan in Portishead proposes a 15 to 50 metre exclusion zone around there. Unfortunately, the inspectors wouldn't let us make it 50 metres, so it had to be 15 to 50. And the problems with the accessibility of that site through the roads that already exist. So I hear a lot of concerns from my residents about that. Equally, they want housing in the area. So it's a really difficult one. I would like to see some, and I think it'll probably come forward from the consultation, for us to look a little closer at where else in Portishead we might be able to put housing that doesn't cause the problems that it's perceived to be causing there. But as it stands, I certainly couldn't go against this one. That it's all where it needs to be. Unfortunately, it's where it needs to be and not where we would like it to be. But we are stuck with what the government tell us we have to do, and therefore I support the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that could be the first pitch we've had for extra homes in Portishead, so that's good. Councillor Caniford.
Thank you, Leader, and I'll do a quick lesson in brief if I can. Just contrary to a lot of the comments, I can't agree with much that has been said in terms of communications, consultations. I led on this plan for 3.5 years, and I went to dozens of meetings with residents. Many residents didn't turn up and therefore grumble they weren't consulted with, but that really is something the council really do find difficult to deal with. Officers have had hundreds of meetings. So that said, it's not a developer's council-led plan. The developers might be involved at national level, but this is, as councillors have quite clearly indicated, it is a number-led plan. Now, we have two choices, and we've had two choices from the very beginning. We do nothing, and we don't have a local plan. And then residents can just sit back and watch it happen. That is a choice. Let's be clear about it. But then we'll grumble about where things are going, but we won't get a say because we chose not to say anything about it. So I think one of the things that people need to remember, this is a 15-year plan. The government want too many houses, as far as I'm concerned. We know they want too many houses, but the reality is these houses simply won't get built, will they? Because if the developers can't sell them, I would suggest this is more like a 15 to 25-year plan, because the houses will simply be now added to the next 15-year plan. So it is frustrating, but we will not see, in my view, 25,000 houses appearing in North Somerset. It's just not feasibly possible. The latest data from London, in May, only 19 freehold houses were sold. This is simply because house prices have got too high and people can't afford them. So the data coming back is not matching up with what we're being asked to do. I'll support this plan. A huge amount of work has gone in by officers and by members, and the reality, it is a good, solid plan. And just remember, if it is not sound, and the public are right on many of these points, it won't make it. It will be stopped, like the last one was, and then we had years of just freewheeling planning development. So let's just make sure we get something in place, and we still have the planning process through that to make sure the things are done properly, to make sure things are in place, to make sure infrastructure is where it should be. That is the fallback. We always have our own planning process. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you, Mark. Before I come to Anamika to sum up, and good luck, I just wanted to say two things. I mean, the first thing is that I think it's important to recognise that this is not the beginning of this process. This is toward the end of the process. We have had the best part of 6 years and two iterations. I mean, is this our second, possibly even our third iteration of a Reg 19 plan? We've been working at this a long time, and we've been on a journey as a community together, and the government policy, successive government policy, has definitely been on a journey and changed over time. There was a period where in the space of about a month we had 3 different national planning policy frameworks to deal with. So our job as a local authority is to try and rise to that challenge and face the world as it is and not as we would wish it to be. That said, we are trying to change the world as we would wish it to be, and we have been lobbying our MPs, writing to government, using all of our networks through the Local Government Association and through the political parties to ask for different solutions and different ways of doing this. And the one theme that I absolutely agree with is that this is still a top-down planning process where government dictates numbers and targets, and we have no choice but to try and deliver them. That's the wrong way to do it. I understand why the government is doing what it's doing. I understand the aspiration to build more homes and to try and meet the housing need of the country in that way, but this route is not the most effective way of doing it. All that said, I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that there's lots of good stuff in this local plan. There are lots of developments that will be welcomed and supported by their communities that will help to deliver more affordable homes, more sustainability in the long term for local communities, including some of our villages. There'll be more affordable homes than ever before. They'll be better designed. There's a clearer and stronger commitment to sustainability and green homes. Land allocated for jobs and employment, which is really critical, and the local plan goes hand in hand with that infrastructure delivery plan. And frankly, if we don't have a plan that says this is what we need to do, we're never going to get the funding for it, whether that's from developers or government or anybody else. So this is an important milestone in building that long-term future that we want. Is it perfect? No. But have we strived to do the best that we can over a long period of time within the rules of the game that we're playing in? Yes, we have. Anamika, over to you.
My goodness, I need to scroll very far back. I've been trying to keep up with you all. Lots of really important questions were asked, and I do think, I do apologise, Mike, but I do think that everybody deserves a response that is detailed as I can make it at short notice. So bear with me, please. So first of all, coming to Mike Bird. Hopefully not too long an answer on this one. So developers will often put forward alternative views on infrastructure. That's quite common. Individual developer transport assessment submissions will only consider the impact of their own site. They do not look at the collective local growth around the area. So in the process of preparing this local plan, we have considered many options and we've discounted several. And the link road identified in the plan is shown by the evidence base to be the most suitable location for the package of sites that are in the plan. Now, as a council, we must base our decisions on the robust evidence that's underpinning our local plan, and that evidence defines the necessary mitigations and trigger points for infrastructure delivery, and that will remain the basis for assessing all proposals as we go forward. I know that doesn't answer your concerns, but I want you to understand that we know of your concerns and that we take all that on board as we go forward. Councillor Burden, I think you were next, if I'm not mistaken. I've been keeping track, you know. First of all, thank you for your kind comments. I was really appreciative of that. We have all worked extremely hard on this local plan, and it isn't just me either. Councillor Caniford before me, the entire team behind me here, there is a very large group of them here. It's been a huge long process and a lot of work has gone into it. I did want to do a quick response related to Blackrock. We have said that mitigation is off-site, but within the developer's control. So we have reduced the allocation to retain control of any build form on the westernmost parcel. I think that you know that. I think this is partly also answering Councillor Whitfield's comments about an ecological buffer to be provided to Western Bickwood, to the south of the site, and future management and maintenance of this area to be secured. Bridget, thank you for your question. I absolutely share the concerns that you have shared about housing numbers and their impact on communities. They really reflect what residents have told me and the planning team in recent weeks and months. The reality is that the government's new targets, as you expressed so eloquently, we now need to plan for 23,000 new homes across North Somerset, actually just more than that. And if we don't plan carefully, we do risk leaving decisions to developers who may deliver less infrastructure and fewer benefits for local communities. I really do share your passion also for our green belt and our open spaces and the importance of our development on those sites. I deeply value our green belt and the wildlife it supports and the open spaces that make our towns and villages so special. And it's not just me either. It is worth restating that until the government increased our housing targets, this council had agreed to protect the green belt. That commitment still guides us. That is why wherever we now need to build on the green belt and elsewhere, we will do so thoughtfully and hand in hand with nature, creating net zero homes, protecting nature where possible, and supporting the development with sustainable transport options. I also understand the concerns about the infrastructure, which goes back to what Mike Bird was talking about, and I can confirm that going forward we will continue to ensure that the plans are appropriate and that they will be taken forward on an infrastructure first basis. The Transport Assessment and Infrastructure Delivery Plan will set out the trigger for when the east of Backwell Crossrail link is needed, and that will be an indicator for us. Councillor Porter. Yes, I understand the concern that you've raised about developers knocking on doors with consultations ready in hand. That is precisely why we need to move forward with this, because things are moving quickly with developers. They are aware of what they can and can't get away with, and that is why it's really important to get this local plan approved. Councillor Daw. I absolutely understand your concerns. I understand everyone's concerns today. I really do mean it as well, because we're all on the same planet here. You know, we all understand these things. Affordable housing is a huge issue. So we've looked over our last 15-year average delivery of affordable homes, and we have an average delivery of 19%, and it's hugely variable. In some years, over the last 15 years, it was only 9%. In other years, only twice, I think it's gone over 40%. So in this draft local plan, as you will have seen in the documents, we're looking for 20% affordable homes from previously developed sites, 30% from affordable housing from greenfield, and 50% affordable from greenbelt houses. The team have looked at what that actually means in numbers, and assuming the 20, 30 and 50% thresholds are achieved, we would expect to secure 5,561 affordable homes from these sites, which is an average of 38.5%, which, if we can manage that on average every single year, I would argue is a huge improvement on where we have been previously. And we are committed to building these homes, which is why we've strengthened policy DP 46, which states that in particular developments that will be expected to provide a range of relatively more affordable open market housing to meet the needs of those aspiring to buy their own home. This is to meet the needs of all residents who are either not eligible for affordable housing as defined in policy DP 43, but equally cannot currently afford to buy a house on the open market. Properties to address this need to include smaller 2- and 3-bed houses, which could also meet the demand for older and for younger people. So I hope that that satisfies your concerns. Turning to PIL, yes, Jenna. Thank you for your comments about us putting health at the heart of planning. I think that is hugely important. I'm going to think through the things that you were concerned about. The numbers, I think I probably have addressed those already, so I don't need to go back to those. Infrastructure Development Plan, just to reiterate, also for PIL, the transport assessment provides an itemised list of schemes and mitigations for PIL. And this document will be published when the local plan goes for consultation, but it will also be shared with members before it does, so that we all have insight into those figures before it gets published. And finally, enforcement. The planning team are committed to monitoring and enforcing everything that we do. And work is ongoing to increase monitoring fees that we charge developers so that we can resource this service fully, particularly in respect of strategic development locations. And I think, Councillor Whitfield, I think your question was answered earlier, and then I would like to thank Mark Canavert for his supporting comments. And then before I stop and catch my breath, I'd like to just reiterate what the leader has just said. I think there are so many excellent things in this local plan. I know we have concerns, all of us do, and there are things that we worry about, but I think let's not forget about all the good things that are in this plan. I think it's full of good stuff that we've all worked really hard to have included, and let's not lose sight of that. And I would like to thank again my team in planning for all the hard work that they have done, and thank you for your support this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Annamika. So that rounds off the debate and discussion. So we'll move to the vote on the recommendations that have been proposed and seconded. So could colleagues indicate their support for the recommendations or otherwise? Thank you. That's unanimously carried. So we will move on to item 7, which is the month 5 budget monitor. So as usual, this is the snapshot of our financial position as we approach the halfway point in the financial year. As previously reported, we are currently forecasting a funding gap of around 4.8 million, so that's roughly 2% of our total budget. So that's a gap between our income and our forecast costs for the financial year, and sets out how we're working together across the council to try and address some of those concerns. The pressures are, of course, very much familiar to us, so demand for adult social care continues to rise, especially for younger adults with complex needs, where the cost of individual care packages can exceed more than £100,000 per year. In children's services, the cost of care and specialist support has increased by more than £1 million this year so far. The number of children with special educational needs requiring school transport keeps growing, and contract costs from everything from waste collection to energy either remain stubbornly high or continue to rise. Despite that backdrop, we have delivered around 85% of our planned savings, or are on track to do so, and we are taking tough and necessary action to bridge the rest. That includes tighter spending controls, in-year savings targets, and a really disciplined review of every reserve. Under Mandy Bishop's leadership, every directorate is taking responsibility, because the financial stewardship is everyone's business and everyone's challenge to try and rise to. We'll continue to try and be open with residents about the scale of the challenges that we're facing and what we're doing to manage it, because we recognise that residents do deserve honesty and reassurance that we're acting responsibly, we're trying to protect vital services, and we're planning ahead as much as we can. We also continue making the case to government that councils like ours, which are efficient, low spending, but under immense demand pressures, do need fairer funding. Just to be clear, our goal remains for this year's budget to balance the budget by the end of the year without compromising on our values as a council and without affecting or undermining the services that people most depend on. And I commend the recommendations to members and ask for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Caniford. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Bridget, Councillor Petty.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Mike. I think, like you, it is extremely worrying that these pressures that we're seeing on adults and children, and admittedly that is not a new situation, but just, reflecting that kind of 5% overspend in adults to date and 10% overspend in children's, which totals more than 9 million. I was going to ask, if you don't mind, potentially Amy Webb, telling me a little bit more about the capital financing and interest line, where there's kind of quite a lot of remodelling happening in that. So the kind of forecast was the 12 million, and then it's quite differing in the forecast. And then the other one was just a minor one, which it was on the table that talked about significant pressures, EATS, environment and etc. Increase in demand for home to school transport. The arrow was pointing down as though the issue was becoming less of a problem. However, the text says increased demand for home to school transport places. So I'm just clarifying whether it's the arrow going in the wrong direction or not, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. Do you want to come back on those points, Amy, please?
Yeah, well, I might need to take one of those away, Bridget, but so let me take away the arrow and see if we need to make a correction, just because I don't have a visual in front of me right now. In terms of capital financing budgets, this also contains, so this is where we would pay for any interest and minimum revenue provision, and also that's offset by our income that we get from Treasury Management. So effectively, we set a budget based on what we think we're going to spend on our capital programme at the beginning of each year. As you know, we experience a certain level of slippage and delay in that programme. So as we do that, we reforecast what we're going to spend on those elements of the budget. And that means we then have more money in the bank because we're not spending it on capital, which means we get more interest. So that is going the right way in terms of supporting our budget, but it does delay the expenditure into a future year. Thanks.
And just to say, Mel Watts has very helpfully said that the arrow indicates the change from last month's report rather than necessarily whether we're overspending or underspending, if you know what I mean. So it's direction of travel relative. Okay, Councillor Dorr, next Tom, and then Hannah.
Can I just quickly ask a question to Nick about whether I can bring up contents of a red paper that was in July's full council?
Sorry, Chair, not without going into exempt session.
Okay. I'll leave it then. I might just have a chat afterwards then.
Okay, that sounds like the best way to handle it. Thanks, Tom. Okay, Hannah, Councillor Young.
I was just going to comment on the home to school transport question, which you've obviously answered in terms of the direction of the arrow, but just to give some reassurance, although the demand is increasing for home to school transport, there's been a huge amount of work on transformation within the team. A massive amount of effort, particularly by Joshua Dean, who's offered great leadership, I think, around that piece of work with the support that we've had. You'll be aware that there were some policy changes this year that went out for consultation and then implemented just this autumn around post-16. That's meant a lot more parents are receiving direct payments rather than us arranging through rather expensive contracts. And we've been having some real success with independent travel training for some appropriate young people with special educational needs, and that's been really popular, so much so that actually demand for independent travel training has outstripped the supply, and we're looking at additional trainers for that, because of course if young people can travel independently and safely to school on public transport, it's not only cheaper and better for the council, but much more importantly, it equips them for life with skills that they can take beyond their time in education. So that's just a flavour, but lots of work within home to school transport to try to reduce budgets, albeit that's been an increasing demand area.
Thanks, Hannah. That's very helpful. Roger, Councillor Whitfield.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from the adult social care perspective, there are more and more pressures, ever increasing. It feels like the population's getting older, the elderly are becoming more infirm, the ones that are paying for their care are running out of money, and at the other end, where people come into the system, people with very complex illnesses and disabilities are increasing and coming into the system, and they're all living longer as well. So there's an awful lot of money that is going out through adult social care, but we have to follow the Care Act assessments, and if we assess that there is a need, we have to pay for it. This isn't compensated on a one-for-one or pound-for-pound basis by the government. They just give us a lump sum, and we have to make that work. And that's where the problem comes in, and I think the problem is equally the same in children's, which is why those two are always highlighted as being where the pressures are. And unless anything changes with national government funding policy, that will always be the same.
Thank you, Roger. Very helpful. Okay, I can't see any more hands, so can colleagues indicate their support for the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. Okay, I'll move on to item 8, which is the medium-term financial plan and revenue budget for 26-28. So this one is the beginning of the process for setting our budget for next year and the years beyond. And I'm afraid I'm going to be a bit of a stuck record here in repeating many of the same themes. You'll see from the report that we're facing an incredibly tough landscape. The costs of providing care for adults and children are rising. We've got more older residents needing support, more children requiring specialist placements, and the cost per placement are higher than ever. Home to school transport for children with additional needs is costing more. Energy, contracts, insurance, all rising faster than our income. And at the same time, government funding reforms, so-called fair funding reforms, could strip about £17 million a year over the next few years from our budget. There's nothing remotely fair about this for North Somerset when you bear in mind we were already disadvantaged by the existing funding formula. We're obviously doing everything in our power to balance the books and live within our means, transforming how we work, reviewing every assumption and driving a council-wide change programme so that our services can be smarter and faster and better for residents. But after a decade or more of finding efficiencies and delivering savings, the room for manoeuvre is extremely limited. So that's why, alongside the local work that we will be doing, we have opened a dialogue with government about the possibility of exceptional financial support. And I think it's important to be clear, that's not the position we want to be in, but it's the right thing to do to plan responsibly and explore every option to protect services and the services that residents depend upon. I think it's important to recognise that exceptional financial support, if we do formally ask for it and if it's granted by government, isn't a panacea in itself. It doesn't actually mean more government funding, but more the opportunity to borrow and capitalise day-to-day spending, or to have the flexibility to seek higher council tax rises. And of course, none of these are good outcomes either for our long-term finances or for our residents. So a really difficult position to be in. We continue to speak up for our community. I'll be writing to the Chancellor and our MPs to continue to make the case for fair funding and critically for action in the Chancellor's budget next month. Everyone living in North Somerset is absolutely right to expect good services, and they do need the government to recognise the pressures that local councils are under. We're doing everything that we can to keep our finances under control, to continue to fight for a fairer deal and do whatever is necessary to try and protect North Somerset's future. But we are operating in a context where we are not in control of all the levers in terms of our ability to generate funding. As Roger and Hannah have alluded to, we're not in control of our statutory and legal responsibilities in terms of delivering services. And there is only so much that we can do locally to influence the shape of our long-term financial position. So the message is absolutely clear. We need the Chancellor to listen, to act, and to help us fix the crisis in local government funding. So I'll move the recommendations and ask for a seconder, please. Thank you, Hannah. Any questions or comments on the MTFP report? Nope. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, apologies. I've got Councillor Bridger online.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mike. Just wanted to add what you were saying. Really, it's deeply depressing. You know, for many years, I think our job as councillors has felt like it's about managing austerity, hasn't it? You know, it's cuts to services, disposal of assets, managing change through transformation and not funding. I mean, as you said, you know, the so-called fair funding review is evidently unfair to North Somerset, and I think it needs to be said the government is now pulling the rug from under us and risks literally bankrupting this council, and I think that needs to be noted and understood by residents. I think writing to the Chancellor is great. I think I'm looking for reassurance, particularly from Labour members of the Cabinet, that they are straining every sinew to get the government to recognise the potential real consequences for our communities of their decisions, irrespective of you know, one-off funding they may announce to benefit one part of our district. But I'm looking for that reassurance. But thanks for bringing the report. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. I mean, I think this is not a party political point at all, Steve. I think the Cabinet and indeed the entire Council stands together in making the case for fair funding. And unfortunately, this is not a new conversation either, is it? It's something that we've been having for a long time under governments of many different colours. I'm really delighted that all of the political groups on the Council stood together and supported our fair funding campaign last year. And I know that our local MPs, two of whom are members of the government party, are supportive of our asks. We all recognise as well the government's got a really difficult job to do as well in order to balance the books. But unfortunately, at the moment, we are being expected to deliver things that we can't deliver. And we do need their support, or the risk is that more and more councils will keel over. Okay. I can't see any more comments, so I'll move to the vote on the recommendation. So if you could indicate your support, please. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the very exciting draft calendar of Cabinet meetings. That's that we approve the draft dates for next year. This is how organised we are. So I'm going to take it as read that that's approved, unless anyone suddenly shouts and says no.
Only to add to the report, Chair, that it has been flagged with me by the Chief Exec in Section 151 designate that we might need some flexibility around dates in February around the budget setting meetings and the finance meetings. So just bear with us. We will keep you advised as early as possible of any changes we need, but we may need to flex some of those dates.
Thanks, Nick. That's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to take that as approved. Item 10 is the forward plan, which is obviously for noting. So unless there's any questions or comments on that, we'll then move on to oral reports from Cabinet councillors. So if anyone's got any oral reports, the only thing I was going to mention is, and this has been circulated to members already, but there were some changes to Cabinet portfolios that I announced recently. So Councillor Clayton is now Cabinet Member for Regulatory Services, Sport and the Pride in Place programme, and Councillor Solomon is the Cabinet Member for Culture, Community Services and Safety, and that information is on the portfolio list on the Council website. Any other oral reports from Cabinet members today? Catherine? Councillor Gibbons?
Thank you. Just a quick one from me to highlight, some of you were there, Councillor Dorr and a couple of others, that we held the first meeting of our very much refreshed Youth Parliament on the 1st of October. And I think it's particularly pertinent when we're talking about a local plan that goes up to, 2041? Yeah? So the fact that we are engaging with young people who will be directly affected by this is incredibly important. And just to say that I think the messages from this first meeting, where we had some wonderful workshops and breakout groups, and they identified 3 top areas of interest that they want to take further and investigate. And I think it's a message for all of us that the top issue for our young people, and there were over 40 delegates, was that they want to see an end to hate and racism. They want a fair and inclusive society in all its forms, which I think is something that we should take very seriously when that's people who are going to be possibly voting at 16 in the future. And just to highlight that on the back of that, this is Hate Crime Awareness Week, and I was at a meeting the other day where people were telling me that they felt there was no longer any point in reporting these things. But I would just like all of you to urge people in your community to report any issues, because if we don't, we will get a picture from the police that hate crime is going down, and it isn't if people aren't reporting it. So we need to get those accurate figures. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and really great to hear about the Youth Parliament success. Okay, I don't think we've got any urgent business today, so at 3:42 I can close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.